everyone. Welcome to All Things Odd. I'm Dr. Natalie Phillips.
And I'm Dr. Hannah Galloway.
And we have a fun topic for you today. But before that, I'm going to have Dr. Galloway kind of talk a little bit about our YouTube channel.
Yes, so this is our YouTube channel. We are slowly getting more subscribers all the time. I think videos are easier to kind of look at here, and the thumbnail images are fun a lot of times. Our great Photoshop work and stuff with the thumbnail images, but this is a good way to send a video to somebody that doesn't have social media. So you can go to our YouTube and subscribe, so that way you'll know when we have a new episode.
All right. Well, we are also going live on not only Facebook and YouTube, but also X on Twitter. And then we drop this video on Instagram. So if you have anybody that watches, then we are also doing those types of social media platforms so that you can share that out as well with your office or with other people who might be watching or might want a link. Okay, so today's topic is fact or fiction. So this kind of stems back when we were at our old office. We had a person that was leaving the office that I had finished working with. And she said, "Oh, I'm so super excited because I had checked out this machine and I feel like my ears are working better. And I'm so happy." And I was like, what machine are you talking about? And she said, "Well, when I first got this machine, I had to ask, they asked me a question if they wanted to help me improve my vision or help me improve my hearing. So I put in hearing. And then the next thing I had to do was send in my nail clippings and get this machine to help with my ears." And I was like, whoa, wait, what did you just say? Like, you sent in your nail clippings? And I was like, I'm not so sure about that, which made me kind of think about like, what in the world is going on out there? And why would you have to send your fingernail clippings in to obtain a machine that would either help you see better or hear better? Like, that was like way out of this world. And those of you that are watching, like, you can laugh along with us because we literally laughed at that. And then we thought, okay, let's like spend some time debunking some myths or some of the questions that come into our office, you know, based on, I mean, I know that was totally out of the world where I don't think I've ever heard anything like that before.
But sometimes people tell us some very strange things, like what they think their hearing loss is caused by, or, you know, sometimes we hear some really strange things. That one, I probably would have had a hard time not laughing about sending your fingernail clippings in because it sounds ripe for fraud.
Right.
But a lot of times people say things that are definitely not true, and that's just what they heard or what they remembered about what happened. So yeah, we decided that there are kind of some misnomers in audiology, and there are some that people ask us over and over and over again. And so we thought we would just come on and do fact or fiction.
Right. And if you're watching and you have another question for us to add to that, we'll see if we can kind of get to that as well. So put it in the comments wherever you're watching. Again, we're going live on Facebook, X, and also on YouTube. So if you have, and also my LinkedIn. So if you have a question that you're like, I wonder about this question, or you're like, oh my gosh, I had that question too, and this is what I thought, like, have the conversation with us. Okay, so the first fact or fiction is, drum roll, does ear candling work? Fact or fiction? All right, so I'm going to let Dr. Galloway talk about this one.
So ear candling is fiction. It does not work. We have two different articles that we'll post. One is from Audiology Online, and the other one, I can't remember which journal it's from, but it was for primary care physicians, just kind of informing them of the practice of ear candling and what's going on with it. It doesn't work, and we know that as audiologists. But these two articles you can kind of look at and see there's some information about studies that have been done to show how it doesn't work. So if the way that it works is the candle goes underneath your ear canal, and in order for it to suck wax out, it would have to have a vacuum, and there is no vacuum. They did tympanometry while someone was ear candling, which is kind of funny, and there was no negative pressure in the ear. So there's no way that would work. And I love the quote from Doug Beck that was in the Audiology Online article. The claimed benefits of ear candling are based on dangerous, illogical, and incorrect assumptions. Ear candling is in fact a dangerous, ill-conceived, and potentially disfiguring protocol with no foundation in science. So thank you, Dr. Beck. We agree with that. Sometimes when people come in and maybe they didn't tell us they were ear candling, or they did, you can actually see candle wax in their ear. And the first time I saw it, I didn't know what it was. And it looks like what if you dripped white candle wax on a table, how it would harden and look just like white dried wax. I saw that in somebody's ear, and earwax is not white like that. So it looked very suspicious. And so anyway, a lot of times we can tell that somebody's been ear candling. There are risks associated with it. So definitely don't do it, because it's not going to help you and it could hurt you. People burn their ears. People get hot wax in their ears. There's all kinds of things. So it could definitely hurt you and it's not going to help you. So don't do it. Oh, Dr. Beck is watching.
He's watching.
That's so awesome. I guess retirement means that he can do fun things like watch our show. I also have to give a plug for the irrigator that's right behind me here. I don't know if you can see it back there. So we have this awesome machine called the irrigator. It's like a water pick for your ears. And you can come into our office and we flush all the wax out of your ear with the irrigator, and it's amazing and it's safe and it takes about 2 minutes. And then you don't have to do any ear candling. So that one is fiction.
Yeah. And so we had put some articles in the chat, so you can kind of go over and look at the articles and click on them, and it talks a little bit more about ear candling. I think, did you talk about the test tubes as well?
Yeah. So in the Audiology Online article, they kind of debunked it 2 ways. One, they use test tubes to show that there's no wax actually coming out of the ear. So if you put it in a test tube, it does the same thing. And actually the wax is from the candle, not from your ear. And then also the negative pressure thing. So that's kind of the 2 ways that it's been debunked. The Audiology Online article did have a lot of interesting history about ear candling, like how it has, been used therapeutically or historically by like the Mayan people. So I thought that was really interesting. But it's, not fact. So It is fiction.
So that one is fiction. Again, so if you're just watching, we're doing fact or fiction, debunking some of these common questions that come in. So if you have another one that you want to add to that, then just let us know, put it in the comments. We'll see if we can kind of tackle that as well today. All right. So the next one is, why do I get dizzy when I am in the shower? So I know a lot of people have asked about this, and we talk a little bit more about this when we see people for some of the dizziness testing that we do. So there's 2 different tests that, the first one, we kind of just blow air in. So cool air and warm air. It's called calorics, or a video nystagmogram. It's part of that particular battery of tests. And the calorics are delivered at 7 degrees above and below your body temperature. And what we're finding out is the cool air makes the fluid in your inner ear flow a certain way. The warm air turns it around. So we're checking for function on each ear. I basically tell my patients, okay, it's like as if I put you in a chair and I spun you round and round and round again, and then I stopped it, and then I watched your eyes. Well, the nice thing about us doing calorics is with the cool air and the warm air, we can isolate each ear to see if one side is weaker than the other. Whereas if we just put you in a chair and spun you around and around again, yeah, your eyes are moving great, but I wouldn't know which side might be causing it if there was one. So if the air irrigations don't work, then we sometimes have to do water, which, again, going back to the question about dizzy in the shower, sometimes when you're rinsing your hair out or anything like that, and you tip your head over and you've got water in your ears and you kind of dump it out, you can notice a little bit of dizziness that lasts for a short period of time. And that's because it's the same thing as that air irrigation that we're doing. However, water has a quicker reaction to that versus the air. The other way that we know this is when we do another type of test called an electrocochleogram. We actually do an electrode where it just kind of goes all the way into the ear and it just touches the eardrum. And so we have to rinse out your ear with some saline and dump it out. And so we typically hear that same comment when we're putting a little bit of saline in somebody's ear, letting it kind of sit there, and then we have them turn their head over and dump it out. And they're like, whoa, I just got dizzy for a few seconds. And that's the same thing. So anytime that you have that, depending on the temperature, though, you get dizzy. So I know that there was another article I'll have Hannah talk about and see if I can pull that up also.
So it just talks about, it's just kind of a historical article, and it talks about the guy that won a Nobel Prize for actually finding out about the caloric response. The other thing that I was going to say is not necessarily in the shower, but I've had people ask, like, when I jump in cold water, how come I get dizzy? So, and that's where I've experienced it before, is jumping in a cold pool or whatever. It kind of makes you dizzy for a little bit. So this article that she's got pulled up right now, it just kind of talks about the guy who won the Nobel Prize for figuring that out. And it was a very, very long time ago. So interesting that anyone was thinking about it.
Yeah.
But yes, that's probably the more common complaint I've heard is when I jump into a, cold water or something, I get dizzy.
Yeah. And then we're going to put that article as well in the comments. All right. Okay, so that kind of was the fact because you can get dizzy with water induced, kind of going into that ear canal as well. So that makes sense why you would get dizzy in the shower. Okay,
Yes.
The next one is my ears have to be clean and have no wax or cerumen is what we call it. And so this kind of comes in when we see people for hearing tests and we look in their ears and they get all sheepish and like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't get my ears cleaned or I didn't clean my ears before I came in. It's supposed to be there. So wax is supposed to be there. So you don't have to be nervous about that. And it definitely is something where it has a weird taste and smell. So it keeps like bugs out of there. It's just kind of like the same thing of mucus in your nose and the hair or the cilia. Same kind of thing where it's supposed to be there, right? And so there's definitely a part of the ear canal where wax starts and then it migrates out on its own. So we can see it sometimes for people that have wax. There's wet wax and there's more of a dry, flaky wax as well. But it typically starts to migrate out on its own. Now, if you wear hearing aids or now that we're wearing earbuds or AirPods or anything like that, every time that you put your hearing aids in or devices in, you could be kind of pushing that wax back in, keeping it there for a longer period of time. So then you have a little bit of impaction. And that's when we would use our irrigator or some other type of method to help you get that wax out. I'm going to have Dr. Galloway talk a little bit more about like Q-tips and why not to use them when we're talking about
this. So my favorite story for Q-tips is I had a friend in college who lived with several roommates. And, if you've ever been to college and you've lived with several roommates, people are like in and out of the bathroom. Somebody was cleaning out their ear with a Q-tip and then somebody else came through the door and knocked their elbow. And so when my dad was teaching me to drive, he always said, it doesn't have to be you that's the idiot. And so that's a really good phrase for this is it's not necessarily just the inherent danger of you having that in your ear, but what if the phone rang or somebody scared you or you jumped and you had that in your ear? You could put it too far. As an audiologist, I feel like I've got enough information that I could safely use a Q-tip in my ear. But the big thing is you just don't want to put it too far down in there. The part that's covered with cotton is not very long. So you can put a little bit of that in your ear, but I guess people that are putting it, way past that is what happens, or accidents. So, that's just kind of a no to keep the Q-tips out. If you look on the Q-tips package, it says nothing about putting it in your ears because that's a giant lawsuit. It says that it's for makeup. And I can't remember what else. Like there's a baby on the picture of on the package. So it doesn't say anything about putting it in your ears. That is not what the product is intended for. So the other thing is if you had no wax, your ears would be really, really itchy. And some people come in and their ears are so itchy and it's dry. And we look in there and it's flaky and red and irritated. And it's because the skin in your ear canal needs that lubrication from the wax to keep things going how it's supposed to. Otherwise, you get really dry. And then we're talking about, putting mineral oil in your ear or something like that. Some people do have eczema in their ears. So that's the other thing too. I know some people think, oh, it's icky and gross, but for us, it's totally normal. And in fact, when you've seen somebody who's very uncomfortable from having no wax or moisture in their ear, it's like a blessing to have that. So
yeah. And so Q-tips are strong enough as if you're trying to clean it out. Because I know a lot of people are like, oh, that feels so good because it's itchy. Or it's like, well, I put it in and then I get so much stuff out. So it's doing something, right? But the problem with the Q-tip is that it's strong enough to push the wax in further, right? Just like the devices that we had talked about. But what we usually tell people is sometimes like if you are noticing that that wax is migrating out on its own, grab a Kleenex at the end of your shower, roll it up so it's conical in shape, and then kind of stick it in your ear canal. And then the Kleenex actually absorbs a lot more of the water that might have been in there from your shower. But it's not hard enough to push the wax in further, right?
Yeah.
But you can kind of twist that Kleenex around and kind of get that wax that's kind of migrated out the ear canal, the walls of the ear canal out better. And I know it's not as effective as the Q-tip, but it's a lot safer. Okay.
Yep.
All right. I had one other thing. to warn you guys about too. I did have a patient in one state that I worked in that he came in and his ear was all scraped up, and it was really, really sore. So I looked in and I'm like, what in the world happened? Well, he took his car key and put it in his ear and tried to clean out his ear with his car key. And that is an
Yeah.
absolute no, because they're so dirty. And
Mhm.
one little nick to your ear canal is can be very, very painful, but then you've just transferred that dirt and grime onto that ear canal too. So
Yeah.
definitely do not use your keys. Do not use.
And on that front, I have 2 toddlers. So I have a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And there are these products on the market to clean your kids' ears out with that look totally dangerous. One is called the Oogie Boogie, which is just like a swab. And I have used it before, like to clear something out of their nose or whatever. Again, I feel like I'm educated in using it, but the way that they describe its use, on the package, I feel like the standard consumer could do things wrong. People have asked us how to clean their baby's ears out with Q-tips. It's like, don't be putting anything in your baby's ear. If you can see wax actually coming out of the ear and you can, wipe it away, that's great. You can do that. You can keep it clean on the outer part of the ear, but you don't want to be sticking anything in there, especially a kid's ear canal. A baby's ear canal is a lot less deep than an adult. And so you could easily get yourself into some trouble. So it's best to just come use the irrigator if you need it, or, there's other drops and things that you can do at home. We can talk to you about that, but definitely not bobby pins, Q-tips,
or keys.
Heard a lot of bobby pins too, which also seems
too.
very sharp and dirty.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So the next one that we have, this one was kind of interesting and also a little different. But the question was, do I have extra earwax in the morning because I did not get enough sleep? That is fiction.
yes.
Because I'm not really too sure even how that person thought that. But because I'm trying to think, it's not like if you sleep on one side or the other that it's going to be dripping out. I mean, you have your eardrum there, and the wax, depending on what the consistency is, it's not like you're gonna overnight get more than you had the night before.
Yeah.
Because of the cerumen producing glands. So I would probably say no, but it also made me think the possibility of this person asking this question could also be because you have your eustachian tube that goes behind the eardrum up to your nose. So if you have a lot of sinus issues, or if you were sick and you had a lot of stuff going in your nose, it's possible that, like, if you laid on one side, it would kind of fill up or go through that eustachian tube to get into your middle ear section, which would feel like you're more plugged up in the morning. And then when your head is upright and the eustachian tube is like this again, it kind of goes that way. So it's that's the only reason. I was trying to think about this, and that's the only thing that I could think of that person feeling why they had more earwax. Maybe because it felt more plugged.
I think it may be, and I've had patients ask me this. They're like, when I wake up, I sleep on my side. When I wake up in the morning, my ear's like kind of wet. And so usually they answer, yes, I have ear drainage. I'm like, tell me about your ear drainage. And this is what they're talking about. Well, your earwax is made of dead skin cells and oil, and everybody's skin is different. If your wax is more oily or made of more oil than skin cells, you can actually feel oil that's sort of collected in your ear. And it's not anything weird about sleeping. It's just that you were on one side for so long that literally oil started to kind of like migrate out. And I've had that happen to me before, where I've slept on one side and then been like, oh, my ear feels wet. But it's not drainage. There is an eardrum between the inside of your head and the outside of your head. So ear drainage is something different, but I think maybe I've had questions about that, so I could see how someone thinks that.
So that one's fiction.
Yep.
All right, we have just a couple more. So again, if you're watching and you're like, hey, I wanted to ask a question, please put it in the comments wherever you're watching this, and we'll see if we can kind of pull that up. All right, fact or fiction? Do hearing aids make my hearing worse? This is really kind of cool. So first of all, there's two different ways to look at this. I'll talk about one way, and then I'll have Dr. Galloway talk about another one. So I think a lot of people think that when they put hearing aids on, because they're amplifiers, it's possible that they're going to be exposed to louder sounds. So I'll talk about that first. And that's true. Although you're exposed to sounds, the way that hearing aids work in the circuitry, there are compression levels. And what that does is it allows different inputs of gain or sounds to come in, and they don't have equal amounts of gain or power that they're given back. So for example, like a rustling of the paper or a whisper or running of water are very soft sounds. So that might be a little bit of gain. My voice is more of a moderate level sound. So those also have a certain amount of gain. And then you have the loud sounds that come in, like if you went to Home Depot and lumber dropped, or you went to a loud a sporting event, or a concert or whatever it is. So the loud input sounds do not get the same power or volume as my voice or the softer input. So in every level of input that's coming into a hearing aid, the hearing aid is smart enough to say, oh, okay, this is how it's set. And we're not going to give you the same amount of power as if I was trying to make a whisper a little bit louder. So first of all, there's that coverage of, or that input level difference. The second thing on a hearing aid is that there's an output level, or an MPO is what we talk about. And so it's almost like a ceiling. So anything that hits that ceiling will kind of roll off. You'll still be able to hear it, but it won't get into the part where it would be damaging to your ears or your hearing. So circuitry wise, if you're wearing a hearing aid, you're pretty safe. If there are some things that are too loud for you and you're like cringing when you hear it, let your audiologist know and try to be very specific what sound that is, because we can go into the software and the algorithms and play around with those compression levels a little bit, or the output levels of that particular sound. So that's circuit wise. So you're pretty safe, I would have to say, saying that your hearing aids are not going to make your hearing worse or expose you to damage of sound. And I'm going to have Dr. Galloway talk to you a little bit more about a different perception of sound.
Yeah, and the caveat to that is too, if you are next to a firework when it goes off, it's already loud enough to damage your hearing. So even if the hearing aid didn't amplify the sound, the hearing aid is also not an earplug, so it's not going to protect you from something that was already dangerously loud. It will cut it from getting louder, but it's still going to be as loud as it was, in its original form. And then the other thing that we are thinking about is perception. So sometimes people get hearing aids, they wear them for a month, they really like them, and then they say, what's weird is that when I get up in the morning and don't put these on yet, like I feel like my hearing is so much worse than it was before. And we can put you in the booth and do a test and show that no, your hearing is the exact same. It's just your perspective that's different. So you have this greater perspective of how corrected hearing could be. I wear contacts every day, and I have since I was a kid. And that's the only thing I can compare it to, is that you don't realize how bad it is until you fix it. And then you're like, wow, how did I ever operate in the world without these? And so I think you just have this greater perspective of, how much better it could be. And you realize how much you're missing those crisp consonant sounds and things like that. When those aren't there, it takes a lot away. And so that's something that people will come up with is this actually making my unaided hearing worse? And no, it's not. Just like glasses are not making your eyes worse, but you realize how much better it is, with the correction.
All right. And then the last one that we have for you is, why do I not like the sound of my own voice on a recording? Oh my gosh. Like when I was a kid, I used to sit in my room and record my voice, probably like singing or doing something silly and then playing it back and being like, ew, like that doesn't sound like me. The same thing when I started a podcast, I didn't like the way my voice sounded. And one of my producers was like, oh yeah, nobody likes it. Just get over it, And so you kind of get used to that. But there is a definite reason why you sound different when you hear your voice being played back to you than when you're speaking. And I'll have Dr. Galloway talk about that.
And actually, this question got answered in my physics of sound class in college. And I was probably a sophomore or a junior. And I was like, that is life's burning question for me. Like they answered it. And it also kind of dates me because I was going to say when you hear yourself on an answering machine. But growing up, that's the way it always was. Like my mom would be listening to her messages and then there'd be one for me. I'm like, oh, there's my voice. I hate it, And the reason that it's different is when you hear yourself talk, you're hearing yourself through your bones a lot. So it makes you think that your voice is lower pitched than it really is. When you hear a recording of yourself on somebody's voicemail or somebody's answering machine or a video or whatever, that is actually how you sound to everybody else. But it sounds weird to you because you're only hearing your own voice through air conduction, not bone conduction. So when you go to a concert and you can really feel the bass in your chest, that's bone conduction. And low frequencies travel best through bone conduction. So when I'm talking, all the bones in my head are vibrating with my own voice and making me perceive it as a lower pitch than Natalie is perceiving it. And yes, when that question got answered in college, I was like, okay, I'm in the right field. I'm an ultra nerd because I've always wondered how that's possible. And so there it is.
Yep. All right. So with that, that ends our show. But if you have any other questions that you're like, I want them to debunk this, or like if whether you think it's a fact or fiction, like that crazy story we talked about in the beginning, then put it in the comments, reach out to us, let us know. But we will definitely be back with a new show next week.